When we think of modern art, movements like Cubism, Surrealism, and abstract expressionism often come to mind. But what about the ones that didn't get much attention? Today, we're exploring some of the most overlooked art movements of the modern era that shaped creativity but are rarely talked about. Let's start with Orphism, a vibrant and colorful movement that emerged from the ideas of Cubism but took abstraction to a whole new level. Orphism began in France around 1912, led by artists like Robert Delaunay and Sonia Delaunay. It was an offshoot of Cubism, but while Cubism focused on breaking down objects into geometric forms and multiple perspectives, Orphism emphasized color, light, and visual rhythm as the main expressive elements. The name Orphism comes from the legendary ancient Greek poet and musician Orpheus. The term was coined by the French poet Guillaume Apollinaire, who believed that painting should have a musical quality. This idea of creating a visual harmony similar to music was a key element in the development of abstract art. What made Orphism unique was its focus on pure color relationships. The artists aimed to create rhythmic and harmonious compositions, inspired by the fluidity and energy of musical rhythm. You'll often see circular shapes and interlocking patterns that give a sense of movement and vibrant energy. Despite its bold vision, Orphism never gained the recognition that Cubism did. Its brief lifespan and the outbreak of World War I led to its decline, and it was eventually overshadowed by other abstract movements. Even so, it played an important role in pushing art toward pure abstraction and demonstrated how color could stand on its own as a visual language. While Orphism faded with the onset of war, a new movement was emerging in Britain. Formed in London in 1914, Vorticism aimed to capture the energy and intensity of the modern world. It was founded by artist and writer Wyndham Lewis, who wanted to express the power and chaos of the machine age. The name comes from the idea of a vortex, a swirling force at the center of movement and energy. Vorticism was influenced by Cubism and Futurism, combining fragmented forms with bold mechanical energy. Vorticist artists focused on urban and industrial subjects, using a hard-edged, angular style. But unlike the Italian Futurists, who celebrated speed and technology with enthusiasm, the Vorticists took a more critical approach. Lewis rejected Futurism's emotional tone and instead promoted a visual language that felt raw and aggressive. The movement had its own magazine, called Blast. Its bright pink cover and bold typography reflected Vorticism's rebellious spirit. Inside were manifestos and artworks that celebrated modern life while rejecting traditional British art, like pastoral landscapes and classical nudes. Despite its ambition, Vorticism was short-lived. The outbreak of World War I scattered its members and brought the movement to an end. Still, it marked a bold and daring moment in British art, laying the groundwork for modern design and architecture through its industrial aesthetic and geometric clarity. Around the same time in Russia, a different but equally radical movement was emerging. It was called Suprematism. This movement took geometric abstraction even further, stripping away all representational elements in pursuit of pure feeling. Founded by the artist Kazimir Malevich around 1914, Suprematism aimed to reduce art to its most basic elements. It focused on pure geometric forms like squares, circles, and rectangles. These shapes were often painted in a limited range of colors to emphasize simplicity and clarity. Malevich believed that art shouldn't be about depicting the physical world. Instead, he thought it should express pure emotion and spiritual experience. For him, the supremacy of feeling was more important than representing objects, people, or landscapes. This radical idea marked a major shift away from traditional artistic concepts and helped open the door to fully non-objective art. But Suprematism wasn't just about painting simple shapes. It was about creating an entirely new kind of art, one that communicated directly through form and color, without any reference to the material world. This revolutionary approach had a lasting impact on later abstract movements, and even helped influence the development of minimalist art. However, like many radical art movements of the early 20th century, Suprematism had a short life. After the Russian Revolution, the movement was pushed into the background. Even so, it marked a turning point in art history. Suprematism proved that art didn't need to represent reality to convey deep meaning and emotional power. As Suprematism faded, a new movement emerged in its place. It embraced the revolutionary energy of the time and aimed to put art to practical use. This was Constructivism. While Suprematism focused on spiritual abstraction, Constructivism was rooted in functionality, design, and collective purpose. Constructivism began in Russia around 1915 and was led by artists like Vladimir Tatlin and Alexander Rodchenko. They believed that art should serve a social function rather than exist purely for decoration. Their goal was to move beyond traditional painting and focus on creating objects and structures that could improve daily life. Vladimir Tatlin, influenced by Picasso's Cubist constructions, began making abstract sculptures using industrial materials like metal and glass. These works reflected the modern, machine-driven world and moved art into three-dimensional space. Alexander Rodchenko brought constructivist ideas into graphic design and photography. His posters and book covers used bold typography, geometric shapes, and dynamic layouts to express the energy of industrial progress and modern life. Constructivism also extended into architecture, textiles, theatre, and fashion. At its core was the belief that art should be part of everyday life, something designed to be used, not just admired. Over time, the movement declined as the Soviet government tightened its control over the arts. However, Constructivism left a strong legacy. It went on to inspire modern design movements like the Bauhaus and had a lasting impact on architecture, graphic design, and visual culture throughout the 20th century and beyond. Decades later, in a completely different context, artists once again began to explore geometry and visual structure. This time, their focus was on optical illusion and perception. This became known as op art. Short for optical art, op art was a major development in painting during the 1960s. It used geometric forms to create visual effects that played with how we see. Rather than depicting reality or emotion, op art focused on tricking the eye. Artists used patterns that appeared to move, vibrate, or create a sense of depth on a flat surface. These effects ranged from subtle shifts to disorienting and even dizzying sensations. The movement was part of a broader interest in perception, science, and psychology that emerged after World War II, as artists and viewers became fascinated by how the mind processes visual information. One of the leading figures was Victor Vasarely, often called the grandfather of op art. His carefully arranged patterns created strong illusions of motion and space, and he believed in making art accessible to everyone. Another prominent op artist was Bridget Riley, whose black and white paintings, such as Movement in Squares and Fall, became icons of the style for their ability to evoke movement through static forms. Op art relied on repeated shapes, bold contrasts, and precise design. Instead of telling a story or representing the real world, It invited viewers to engage with the artwork through perception itself. The movement gained international attention after the Responsive Eye exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in 1965. The show introduced op art to a wide audience and made it a cultural sensation. Although op art's popularity peaked in the 1960s, the movement left a lasting impact on design, fashion, and advertising. Its influence is still visible today in digital art and visual effects. While op art created the illusion of movement, some artists took it further by using actual motion in their work. This led to kinetic art, a movement where motion became a central part of the artwork. The word kinetic means relating to motion. Since the early 20th century, artists have used movement to explore time, technology, and perception. In kinetic art, that motion could be mechanical, natural, or triggered by the viewer. The earliest experiments came from artists like Marcel Duchamp, but it was Alexander Calder who brought kinetic art into the spotlight. His iconic mobiles are delicate, balanced structures that shift with the air and turn sculpture into something dynamic and ever-changing. They move gently and unpredictably, creating shifting patterns of form and shadow. Kinetic art was revolutionary because it challenged the idea of art as something fixed or untouchable. It invited participation. It asked the viewer to engage, to move around it, or even to activate it. In doing so, it blurred the line between art and science, between object and experience. The idea of art that moves and evolves continues to inspire artists today. Kinetic art reminds us that art doesn't have to stand still. It can be alive, dynamic, interactive, and constantly changing, just like the world around us. Have you heard of these art movements before? Which one is your favorite? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.